All right, let's clarify your 90-day growth plan using just 10 deceptively simple questions. These are questions that we use in our own multi-million-dollar business and we use with our 7- and 8-figure clients. The concept is this: the more your business grows, the simpler we need to be able to communicate to everyone involved about where we are headed in the next 90 days. And as a bootstrapper with limited resources, we need to find clarity and focus. So stick with me for these 10 questions. They will help you do just that. I'm actually working off of a document, which wherever you're listening to this, you can download the document and go through this yourself. And this is the sort of thing that I will go through with my clients, with our members. And it is a little bit interesting how quickly you can answer the questions. It's a good sign if you are ready with the answers. It's also a good sign, on the other hand, if you have to dig in. Each of these questions could be a multi-day workshop. And for me, I've spent 6 months on some of these questions, but sometimes you've got these things sorted out. You can answer them quickly and move on. What I've noticed, for example, when a lot of our members come to our events, they will get all these ideas for their business and they will write pages of notes, and then they will come back to their team and brain dump. And the problem is that your team they have jobs, they have a lot of responsibilities they're already working on, and they're not actually getting clarity from you. They're getting complication, but worse, without the context. So the point of these 10 questions is to hold you to a higher standard of clarity and vision about where you're going for the next 90 days. Okay, so let's run through the questions one by one. There's only 10. It'll be fun, I promise. Question number 1. What is your business's biggest challenge right now? And what is the next step? So this is really about, in any business, you can point to the one key challenge or the one key constraint that, if unlocked, would allow the entire system to flow faster. It is your job as the founder to identify this. It goes on to say, what key challenge became clearer this weekend, and what is the next action step? It says this weekend because we handed this particular version out at an event. And of course, when you're sitting in a room with entrepreneurs for 3 days, you're going to talk about a broad range of things. There are infinite amount of things that you could do with your business. But the key to making progress is to focus in on the one key challenge that unlocks growth and unlocks the ability to maybe someday circle around and address the rest. You have limited resources as a bootstrapper, and often we're working with shoestring teams. It is absolutely critical that you can walk away from a weekend, a week, a mastermind, a coaching session, and say, this is the key challenge in the business right now. We need to put our best energy and focus on solving it. That is the purpose of the first question. Can you take all these amazing ideas? We should optimize this. We should look into this. We should do that. We should research this, and say, where is my time and energy investment going to go now? What is the key thing and the next step that will unlock growth for the business? None of this stuff is conceptually complicated, but it's actually really hard to do. Most of our to-do lists are miles long, and the same for our teams. And this can actually become a really big problem when there is a key unlock in the business, whether that's improving the product and price point, whether it's getting more qualified leads in the door, whether it's a wholesale pivot or a team change. The key to unlocking growth is to get the best energy and investment on that particular constraint or challenge in the business as soon as possible. And look, we're looking at a 90-day window here. Typically, if you execute well, then this key challenge could change in 90 days. That's the idea. We want to create real progress, not simply have a list of to-do items that goes on forever and all of them sort of halfway get done in a 90-day period. We really want to create an unlock, and that's the purpose of the first question. So again, what is your biggest challenge in the business right now, and what is the next step? Okay, so question number 2 is all about focus. Name your team's one core focus for the next 90 days. How will you measure it? Who will be responsible? And how will you keep score? And this question is really about, will you do it daily? Will you do it weekly? Do you have a scoreboard in your Slack, or do you have a dashboard? Or will you use something like a daily huddle? So how are you keeping that key person accountable, or how is the team keeping them accountable to solving that one core focus? This could be new sales, this could be conversions, this could be churn, it could be some core innovation. But again, we're tagging onto this principle of we want to make progress in the business. We want to unlock relative to this core challenge we identified in the first question. So what will be that team's core focus? And critically, how are you measuring it? Great teams will measure their progress and keep themselves accountable regularly towards that progress. Again, it's simple, right? But it is very challenging in many organizations to implement a culture like this, and I want to encourage you to do so. That's it. You have a simple message. You don't have 3 days worth of notes. We are circling the wagons around this one key focus. Here are some supporting metrics that measure the key focus. Here's the person who's going to create the results. Here's how we're going to support them. And here's how we're going to keep score. That's just that simple. So question number 2 is all about focus. What's the core focus? How's it measured? Who's responsible? How will you keep score? All right, number 3, understanding your customer. This is we want to revisit every 90 days. We want to continue to come back and understand our customer better. This is where innovation comes from. The sub-questions: who is your ideal customer? It's an exercise that takes less than a few minutes. Sometimes people have an aspirational ideal customer, but it's not actually the ideal customer in their business right now. This is where the exercise gets valuable. Give your ideal customer a name, like maybe adjective name. Maybe use the name of one of your best historical customers, representative of someone who's profitable, who fits the culture of your company well, and you've really done well with over the years, and describe them in detail. Now, here's the next sub-question. What specific problem are they attempting to solve? And again, this is something you want to define on the document and then reveal to your team. You want to keep it simple for your team and make sure you're all in alignment around it. And to do this, consider the jobs to be done framework. This is a little bit of a Google deep dive you can go on. The concept of a job to be done is that a lot of us think we are selling the features of our product, the coolness of our product, or even the benefits of our product. But it can be the case that our customers are buying our product for different reasons than we think we're selling it for. So the classic example of this, and there's a whole book about this, which we'll link up to. But I think you'll get the idea through this example, which is when McDonald's was concerned about the level of milkshakes they were selling, they sort of assumed that they were in the milkshake game, right? And so they looked at all the competitors' milkshakes and compared the features and the pricing and sort of the stuff that we typically do as entrepreneurs. But it turns out that, at least in the morning, McDonald's customers weren't milkshake aficionados. They weren't comparison shopping milkshakes. What they were actually doing was looking for sort of a breakfast supplement while they commuted to work. So what they cared about was the convenience of being able to hold the thing and go into a McDonald's while they drove to work. This is critical because now you are competing against other items that they could potentially do that with, like a bagel, for example. So your milkshake is competing with a bagel, not the best milkshake in town. And this actually can be the case for a lot of our businesses. If you don't know the job to be done, if you can't describe clearly the reasons your customers are buying your product, schedule 10 customer calls. Right when you get back from your brainstorm session, from your mastermind, talk to 10 customers and talk to 10 more and keep doing it until the light bulb goes off and you're like, that's it. That is the reason. Let me give you another example. If you think about like agency purchases with mid-market companies, often those buyers aren't necessarily buying for results, but buying for a certain image that purchase gives them in their organization. So now, if we're selling into that company, we might be thinking, well, we're the best. We create all these results. Look at the results we created for everybody. But actually, there's a slightly different psychological cue that's driving that purchase. And once you know that, you can optimize around for that, as McDonald's did with the milkshake, right? So they're creating a straw that's maybe not the most tasteful straw, but one that works on the road for the commute. This is the concept. The more we can get a sense for this, the better we can position our product for that ideal customer. The final piece here is, what is the unique way in which you solve it? So the moment you know that true customer desire, now you can present the unique proven way that you solve it. So that's it. It's a very simple exercise. All right, question number 4, positioning. Use 3 brand promises to communicate your unique solution. This is something I took directly from Scaling Up and Vern Harnish's methodology. I love it. It simplifies, and we're going back into internal. Now we understand our customer. Well, what promises are we making to the marketplace, and how are we positioned differently from every other company out there? And you can do this through 3 simple promises. The framework is just this. You have your first promise, ideally focused on that core problem, and then you present the proof. So in the case of our recruiting company, for example, you can hire your next great Latin American team member in 21 days or less. And that's presented with proof. Like, look at the last 100 hires we made. On average, they're happening less than 3 weeks. Simple. Promise number 2. You present promise number 2 along with the proof. So you're simply coming up with 3 brand promises. The third promise, and this is an interesting one, gives us a little bit of latitude, is more of a qualitative one. So when we said 21 days or less, we are putting hard numbers to our promises. In the case of the third one, you can have something more qualitative. So just as an example, if you use the DC community, promise number 1 is vetted and legit founders promise, and we have revenue numbers and what sorts of businesses they have. So we have the proof of that. So it's very rare to be able to find vetted founders of this level. We have it. Here's the proof. Promise number 2 is that they're global citizens. Well, what's the proof of that? We have the average number of days that they're traveling every year, where they're located around the world. Promise number 3, more qualitative, a little bit harder to prove. In our case, that is a spirit of generosity and helpfulness. That's something that we cultivate in the community, is something we filter for. Can I prove it? It's a vibe thing. But those are our 3 brand promises. And for me, the reason I like this positioning exercise is it just makes your life easier when you're creating all these marketing materials you have to create. It's like create something around one of the 3 brand promises. And if something's not resonating, you can tweak and change, but you're not just always reaching into the bag trying to say something new. You're actually reinforcing one of those 3 key promises every time you're creating a piece of internal material, external marketing content, etc. So having these 3 brand promises is very empowering to the whole team. They're not constantly having to be creative about what's happening around here. Everything that's happening in your business reinforces one of these 3 key promises. So to recap, positioning, you are identifying 3 key brand promises. 2 are measured, 1's a vibe or more qualitative. All right, question number 5, innovation and unique advantages can be one of the harder questions to answer, but potentially one of the most profitable. The question is this: are you 10x better operationally in terms of operational cost at delivering on the core brand promise than anyone else in the world or in your space? So this is a relatively high bar, but typically this is what you're going to find in outlier companies. So I think a classic example of this is Google found a 10x cost advantage at indexing the web. And because they had the technology to be able to do that, they obviously became one of the outlier companies of all time, maybe one of the best companies of all time. There are small businesses that are able to do this. These are the ones you hear about. These are the ones that people were talking about. Did you hear so-and-so was able to exit for 100 or 200 or 300 million? Often they will have found a 10x arbitrage on some kind of attention channel. We knew about X sort of ads before anybody else. And even though our product was the same, we were able to get the message out there at an extremely lower cost than anybody else. So that will typically be the case in a bootstrapper context. You could have a 10x technology advantage. I remember when Hrefs launched, they were sort of early on this idea that, everybody assumed that no one could index the web as well as Google. Well, they sort of some years later figured out how they could create a facsimile of that index and thus provide very good SEO data to clients. Therein lies one of the key elements of Hrefs' success. Now, I'm not privy to that story. This is just me looking at it from afar. So this is a sort of gold standard for companies that separate from the herd. If we're not there yet, which many of our companies aren't, the alternative question is, and sort of like a way to bootstrap your way into this would be to ask, what are some things that only your company can or is willing to do? And how do those actions create an advantage? You're listening to a podcast or watching a video right now. I think it's pretty easy to think of examples of content publishers who sort of were revealing information that no one else was willing to reveal, or were doing stunts that no one else could afford. My business partner, Ian, brought up this example of, early in the days of YouTube, I don't know how many years ago, but, there was some young kid whose father owned this like large exotic car collection. And he convinced his father to let him like put that collection on YouTube. And of course, nobody in that older generation was willing to do that. And so this kid had sort of found this scarce resource, which is this collection, and was willing to publish it on YouTube, which is something at the time no one else is willing to do. Now it's sort of standard. And so every 90 days, we want to sort of revisit this concept. A similar situation happened for us, which is when we started the podcast, we weren't talking about what products we sold online because no one was willing to share what products they were selling online. No e-commerce companies were sort of opening the hood of what was happening. And so all the podcasts were very vague about how people were making money online in legitimate ways, or, in non let's make money online sort of ways. And so that was something our company was willing to do. and it created an advantage and got us a podcast audience. I remember at the same time, Pat Flynn, who has an enormous amount of success online, was sharing his income reports. Hey, here's my website. Here's how much money I'm making from my website. You see this cycle repeat, which is there's certain people, you could look at Mr. Beast on YouTube. I'm going to do something that no one else is willing to do just to get views on YouTube. I'm going to do something crazy, right? It's this concept of a controlled resource, to use the 7 powers framework, a scarce resource, something that you as a company are willing to do that no one else is willing to do. You can look at the start of the Empire Flippers. They were willing to publish the income statements of their AdSense sites. So this is a way to get an advantage and to work towards that 10x cost multiplier. In the case of the Empire Flippers, that one thing they were willing to do led to another advantage, which was a 10x cost advantage at the time of now, well, if they have this big audience watching these income reports, if you want to sell a business and put your business in front of the maximum amount of audience, you're going to get a 10x advantage by going with them. And so this is the sort of thinking that can drive innovation. And it's good every 90 days to ask yourself, what are you willing to do that the rest of the market isn't? Okay, number 6. This is a question about network. The question is this: who are 5 people you could build a relationship with that would move the needle dramatically for your company? Often, we come away from events or, our masterminds or whatever, and we have a lot of what's, which is like, what do I have to do? What does my team have to do? These long to-do lists. But it is often the case that the biggest unlocks come through who's. This could be a strategic partnership. It could be a key customer. Could be a killer hire. It could be an influencer. And so if you download the document, what you're going to see is just a chart with name, why them, how to connect, and the first step. And the thing about building a network of these key people is that this can often be quite a long game. I mean, it might not just be as a matter of a Twitter outreach or an email. These things have such huge potential unlock that we want to start thinking about this sooner rather than later. Like, how do I start getting involved in this person's circle? How do I, send out gifts or be of value to them? Like, what is some way that over time I can build a relationship so that they could catalyze and unlock in the business? It is common for best-in-class companies to have 50, 100, hundreds of names like this, that they are cultivating relationships for the long term, because it's often simply a who that unlocks that next big stage of growth in your business, not a what. All right, question number 7, business model. What assumptions do you have about pricing that you haven't tested? Who owns this? I could talk about this for like days. This is the biggest lever in your business. In a few minutes, you can run a pricing experiment. You can go premium. You can go down market. You can tweak your pricing for your old customer. There's so many things we can do with pricing in a short amount of time. It is the most powerful way to change a business in 24 hours, is to run a pricing experiment. So the purpose of this question is just to prod you. Why the heck aren't you talking about pricing today? What can you do with your pricing to revolutionize your business? Because often it will. The next part, do you have a rock solid financial snapshot of your business on a monthly basis? Do you have a system for forecasting? This is just simply a yes or no. And if the answer is no, this is a challenge you need to take on in the next 90 days. You need to get this ball rolling. Question number 3 under business model. What metrics do you obsess about? Are they leading or lagging? Why? Who is responsible? There's a little bit of a revisit of question number 2, But if you have a more developed dashboard, perhaps you're monitoring many different areas of the business. But again, what we want to do is say, like, these are the numbers that matter for this business. What are the leading? What are the lagging? Most of us look at lagging all the time. We look at revenue. We look at net profit at the end of the year. But what about leading? What is the team thinking of on a daily basis that leads to those key things? Famously, Facebook cared about how many of its users logged in every day, right? If people are logging on, if X percentage of our user base is logging onto Facebook in the last 24 hours, our ecosystem will be healthier. It will ultimately lead to our goal of ad revenue. What is that leading indicator that you obsess about in your business? Your whole team should know it. Question number 8. Do you have effective team members who can take responsibility for the key outcomes listed above? Do you feel supported in these core goals? If not, consider a change. The team question is a diagnostic question that we revisit in almost every coaching call, right? I'm on a phone with a client. Remind me again, what's their title? What do they do? What's their key metric? How much do they get paid? And I sort of put in this, how do you feel supported in these core goals? I worded that question intentionally because what happens with a lot of this stuff is we'll write down like these key challenges, like this is what needs to happen in this business to get to the next level. And as we get further through the questions, we feel increasingly alienated, like we're just adding burden to ourselves. And so the reason I said, do you feel supported, is that your team would rally around these core challenges, constraints, numbers, initiative, promises, jobs to be done. If they don't get it, if they can't get on board with this stuff, consider a change. Because this is what we're trying to accomplish here. We're not trying to write down things that become a forever to-do list for you. The whole point of this exercise is to equip the team, your investment, with the ability to create growth in your company. And so if you find yourself feeling alienated, like, well, I hired all these people and they're doing things that aren't showing up here, well, that's when we got to make a change. Number 9, cadence and leadership. Trying to break down and keep this concept of leadership simple. And this document is a form of leadership because it's having clarity around your 90-day vision, not a 3-page brain dump. How often will you communicate the answers to all the above questions? And again, if you fill this out correctly, we're keeping our answers short here. You can communicate this in a minute, which is what we'll do, say, on our weekly team call. We will revisit the key initiative, the key metrics. The promises are right there. The brand is right there with the 3 key promises. Just keeping it simple can all be on one slide. So how often will you communicate this to your team? Daily, weekly, monthly? What format will you use? Huddles, reports, strategic reviews? Would more frequent or clearer communication speed up the results? So the idea here is that the whole reason we're doing this is to simplify our vision for growth in the next 90 days. Now, as a leader, how do you communicate? What is your cadence? How often are you communicating? And the burden is lightened because your message is simple. And the concept is it should be easier to get support and alignment from everybody involved when you've clarified your vision. That's it. Should be falling together here, right? Because the questions are answered. What is our key challenge? What are our key metrics? We got our financials in place. We got our brand promises. We know the job to be done. We know who's responsible. We have a system for keeping them accountable. Now let's repeat, right? This is what we're doing. And we're going to know the moment we're off track because we're tracking these key metrics that apply to all this stuff. Running a business doesn't need to be that hard. That's the idea. All right. So cadence and leadership, that's number 9. Here's a bonus. Question number 10. Because one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is this concept of fulfillment. Where does it come from? And I think that fundamentally people want purpose, they want to feel useful, and they want to be a contributor. That goes for you, that goes for your team, that goes for everybody. Here's the question. Who are some people in your life that you can show up for in the next 90 days? What could you do to help or be available? And this doesn't need to be some grand vision of how many people you're going to save or how many chickens you're going to put in pots or whatever. Simply your presence is a contribution. So who are you going to be around? Who are you going to reach out to? Who are you going to call? That's one level of contribution. The next level is you can proactively help people in your team, help your customers, help your family members, help your friends. What's the point of abundance if we're not out there helping others? So I know a lot of us, look, we're running a business and we're run ragged. We feel maybe because we've got a gazillion pages of notes and all these to-do items that we just don't have anything left to give. And I understand that. But too many 90-day periods like that can lead to burnout and unfulfillment and a lack of purpose. So that's why it's a bonus question. Once you get the business on track, you feel supported by the team, you've got a clear vision forward, you can also take some time to ask yourself, how do you feel like you're contributing and showing up for others? That's it. 10 questions. It's simple. Clarity, focus, 90 days to unlock. After 90 days, we'll revisit and do it all over again. Thanks for listening.